Hi, my name is Justin Lara. This is the Scenario 3 baseball trip assignment for Aviation 430, multi-engine ground at Liberty University. In this scenario, I'm a multi-engine rated private pilot and want to fly some buddies to a baseball game. The flight I chose is a bit longer than 200 nautical miles. We're flying from Reed Hillview in San Jose, California to John Wayne in SoCal to go watch the Giants play the Angels. The Giants don't actually play the Angels today, they're in New York to play the Mets, but I'm a big Giants fan and I was already planning a flight to John Wayne, which is near the Angels Stadium, for flight school. Although that flight will be in a Cessna 172, not a multi-engine. For this scenario, we'll be taking a Beechcraft Baron owned by a company I work for. The scenario doesn't say if we're commercially rated, so I'm going to assume for this one we're not, and I'll talk a bit more why that's important later. The weather is forecasted to be VFR. I put this presentation together yesterday, so the departure time and weather information is from what was available last night. The planned departure is noon, April 18th. Before diving into the details of the flight planning, I would like to briefly discuss what I do if we get lost on our way to John Wayne. Getting lost can be a dangerous situation, especially when getting low on fuel. To remember these procedures, I like to use the 5 C's for confess, conserve, climb, communicate, and comply. The first step, confess, means to simply admit you're lost and decide you need to do something about it. This can often be difficult for pilots because of the macho hazardous attitude. This hazardous attitude is when a pilot has a "I could do it, I'll show them" mentality. Pilots often try to prove themselves to others by accepting unnecessary risk. However, this hazardous attitude can be countered with the antidote "taking chances is foolish." When lost, a pilot should recognize the danger it presents to safety, be unwilling to take chances, and respond with the necessary actions to correct for their error. The next step is to conserve. We don't know how far off course we are and don't know how far we need to go to get back on course or to an airport to refuel. On top of that, we are burning fuel while we try to solve our issue. There's no sense in burning more fuel than necessary, so we'll throttle back and lean the mixture. Next is climb. By climbing, we will increase the effectiveness of the radios by reducing line of sight obstacles. Additionally, this will allow us to see more terrain and references to locate ourselves on aeronautical charts. Then we will communicate using the radios and try to get some help. Air traffic control can provide assistance using radars to locate us and vector us somewhere. If we're not already talking to air traffic control and can't figure out the right frequency, we could talk to the emergency frequency on 1 to 1.5. And finally, we'll simply comply with what air traffic control wants us to do. Now I'll get into the pre-flight planning. I like to use PreFlight to do all my flight planning. Part of single pilot resource management is to utilize all available tools to ensure a safe flight, and PreFlight is an extremely valuable one that I have access to, so I'll use it. It's important, however, that with any mobile electronic flight bag, or any other asset for that matter, that we know how to operate without it. iPads only have a limited battery and like to overheat on hot days in the sun, and then we lose that resource. We need to be prepared with paper charts and printed out nav logs in case this were to happen. We will depart from Reed Hillview at 1900 Zulu and arrive at John Wayne at about 2045 Zulu or 1345 local. I plan for 7,500 feet, except for at the end we need to be at a specific altitude to use the Los Angeles Special Flight Rules area. I'll talk a bit more on that on the next slide. Important airspace to look out for is a restricted area near Paso Robles and a TFR for Disneyland right by John Wayne. Here is the information about the Los Angeles Special Flight Rules area. I've used this before to get to Catalina Island and it was super interesting. It allows you to fly right through the LAX Bravo, right over the top of the field without talking to them at all. The requirements are you must be VFR with a transponder set to 1201, be on the Santa Monica VOR 132 radial with any collision lights on and under 140 knots indicated airspeed. I've never really worried about the speed requirement because I've only done it in a Cessna 172, but with the faster twin engine we will definitely need to make sure that we don't exceed that. When flying at a southeastern direction, you must be at 3,500, and for a northeastern direction, 4,500. So we'll make sure we stay at 3,500. There is a frequency to use, 128.55, to give position reports to other pilots using the Special Flight Rules area, and you use it kind of like a CTAF. Task management is going to be very difficult toward the end of the flight with the special flight rules area and our destination immediately after. We'll use our passengers to help with checklists and make sure we do anything and everything as early as possible while the workload is lower. I like to use the PAVE checklist to ensure I've considered all aspects of the flight. This stands for pilot, airplane environment, and external pressures. For pilot, I use the I'm Safe checklist for illness, medication, stress, alcohol, fatigue, and eating. There's a couple red flags here that stand out to me. I'm just coming off another cold. I don't know what it is this year, but I've been sick more often this year than the last 5 combined. I still don't feel quite 100% and have a cough, but the sinus pressure has gone away, so I think I'll be fine there. Stress always plays a factor when you're a full-time college student with a full-time job and other stuff going on. Another important consideration is if we're going to a ball game, we must remember the 8-hour bottle to throttle rule. No beers at the game if we're planning on flying home right after. Next is the airplane. We'll need to make sure we have all the required equipment according to 14 CFR 91.205. Make sure all the required inspections have been completed, pre-flight the aircraft, and make sure it's got all the required documents. We will need to consult the POH for weight and balance and performance calculations. This chart was taken from the Barron POH to determine cruise power setting. There's also charts to determine things such as accelerated stop distance, accelerated go distance, landing distance, and other things, and we'll need to determine all that before departing. I don't have time to go through them all in this presentation. But for the cruise, we will need to find pressure altitude. Let's say it's 8,000. We can then slide over to the temperature. Let's say it's a standard day. Then we can see that for at 2,300 RPM and 21 on the manifold pressure, we'll get 76% power, 12.7 gallons per hour, 186 knots true airspeed, and 165 knots calibrated airspeed. On any performance chart, we can interpolate the data to get more specific numbers, but can never extrapolate beyond the chart. For the environment, I like to use NW Craft. That stands for NOTAMs, weather, known air traffic and total age, runway lengths, alternates, fuel required, and takeoff and landing data. All this information can be found at on PreFlight or the POH. The only important NOTAMs look to be the PAPIs are out of service at John Wayne. They have a 5,700 foot by 150 foot runway and a 2,886 by 75 foot runway. There are several possible alternates to include Ontario, Los Angeles, and Paso Robles. We would need to get more back pocket information and find the runway lengths for those airports in case we need them. At 12.7 gallons per hour, we would need roughly 23 gallons plus half-hour reserves and personal minimums, so let's say at least 35 gallons, but we'll take more. The takeoff and landing data we would pull from performance charts. At Reed Hillview, for our departure at 1900, we should have winds variable at 3 knots, greater than 6 decimile visibility, and few clouds at 1,500. When we arrive at John Wayne at 2045, it'll be winds 220 at 9, greater than 6 decimals visibility, and a scattered layer at 25,000. We should keep in mind that a cold front is moving in and could affect our departure area. It looks like it shouldn't cause many issues until after we're out of the area, but something to look out for. If it comes in earlier than expected, we could see some cloud development and precipitation and higher winds. We got a few external pressures we need to consider. I'm a big baseball fan and don't want to miss the game. It's kind of a bucket list thing for me to see all the MLB parks, and I haven't checked off the Angel Stadium yet. However, we won't let that affect decision making. We haven't yet bought tickets in case we need to cancel, and plan to just drive there to catch the next game of the series tomorrow as a backup plan. Additionally, we don't want to let my boss down and need to get this proposal down there, but we'll just take it with us tomorrow if we need to. There is one issue I have with the flight, and maybe we're commercially rated so it's not a big deal anyway. But if we're not, this flight may not be legal. According to 14 CFR 61.113, private pilot privileges and limitations, we cannot transport persons or property for compensation, and we must pay our prorated share of the flight. It sounds to me that my boss is compensating me to transport the proposal by allowing me to take the plane at no cost. Everything looks good except for the legal issues. If we're commercially rated, it's an easy go. However, as a private pilot, we would need to pay for the fuel, oil, and airport expenditures and could not transport things for him. These are my references. And again, my name is Justin Lara. Thank you for watching.